I spent last summer in London, in England, living toward the city centre. Now, while I've been to it and lived there as well as Europe many times over the years, some of the cultural habits in those places never ceased to take my notice. And I think part of the reason for that is given the fact that I've lived in Japan now for a number of years. I guess growing up in a Western country has helped me come to realize that there is a reason why we can't have nice things. Safe public transit, safe streets and parks at night, allowing small children to walk themselves to school, freedom from vandalism, freedom from marauding urban youth. In the past several decades, these nice things we just cannot have. And what do translucent, glowing, cyberpunk, Blade Runner-esque public toilets have to do with this? As I compare and contrast Tokyo, the city I currently live in, with the city I lived in last summer, London, plus the greater implications of why we can't have nice things. A big thanks to Raid Shadow Legends for sponsoring this video. Now, it's a pretty cool game with a dark-esque type fantasy theme. What I like about it is you can pick it up and play for just a couple of minutes, or if you have a little bit more time, for half an hour. You can play on your cell and on your desktop, and it's really easy to get started and make serious progress. I really like the different styles of combat that the different characters can play, but also the boss fighting, but more so the meticulous attention to detail and the stunning graphics that the game employs, because it looks good on both your laptop and your other devices. So what's new for September 2020? Well, there's been a huge champion update to make the PvP even more competitive, as well as the introduction of a forge where you can craft top quality artifacts and get started with them right away. Use my link only in the description and you will get, if you are a new player, you'll get 100,000 silver plus 50 gems plus 10 mystery shards plus 1 free champion. This bad boy here, Slasher. And all of this treasure is waiting for you here. Help support this channel by downloading Raid Shadow Legends. It's a lot of fun and it is very much appreciated. And now back to the video. Probably one of the most noticeable differences between the Occident and the Orient in terms of cultural habits is simple hygiene. Most people don't remove their shoes upon entering their homes, for example, and track the filth from outside into the space they live. And this is not only unique to the UK, but appears to be not only found in the Anglosphere, that being Australia, Canada, and the US, but pretty much most of the places that I've been to around the continent. While of course this habit of taking off one's shoes changes when there's rain and snow, for the most part Westerners tend to wear their shoes indoors. And they even do this after being in places like public toilets, where men especially will be the first ones to tell you that the floors are usually covered in spilt urine, and then afterwards track this all over the carpets in their homes. And this is what brings me to the focus of this video. As stated previously, last summer I lived in London, and what I noticed in that city, like many centers in Europe, was the unmistakable foul odor of dried urine after periods with little rain. You could go out in London on a Friday night, turn around into a lane only to see young women squatting down with their skirts hiked up, relieving themselves on the concrete. On a Saturday night, London smelt, put simply, quite awful. Now, the reason for this is that beside the few public toilets or pay toilets in places like Hyde Park, the only outdoor public toilets I can remember running across was this standing-only turret-style cylinder that clearly says on the outside that it's for urine only, but was in fact on every occasion I was near Trafalgar and felt the need to use it, well, it was generally almost every time caked in splattered, malodorous, retch-inducing fecal matter. Because let's be real, and anyone who's ever spent any time in central London, the central part of that city, will tell you, it, like many other cities in Europe, because of the lack of this basic civilized necessity, that being clean public toilets, smells oftentimes like an open sewer, where every wall is as good as any other. Even the London Underground was not much help. Some of the larger stations like Paddington had public toilets, but the majority of the smaller stations on the lines that I frequently used didn't. After researching this a bit, the simple answer to why this is the case is that these public toilets just cost the local councils a lot of money. According to a thread on Quora, there are a few businesses like McDonald's that are trying to pick up the slack and allow public use of their toilets, but my experience was that you still need to purchase something to be able to use the toilets in places like McDonald's or Burger King for that matter. And unless you're in a nice restaurant or such a place, the vast majority of public toilets in the United Kingdom are filthy, smelly, disgusting, and very unpleasant places to be. And this is in stark contrast to not only big metropolises like New York, but also and especially Japan and in particular Tokyo. Greater Tokyo, or Metropolitan Tokyo, has a population of around 38 million people, but as any traveler to this city will notice almost immediately, are a few things that stand out in relation to cities like London. First is the almost total absence of rubbish bins anywhere in the city to be found, but paradoxically, probably the cleanest, most litter-free streets on earth. And the reason behind this is because people are meant to carry their own garbage with them to wherever their destination is and then discard of it there. Even smokers carry around small fireproof cases to discard their cigarette butts in. The streets, the train stations, and also the public toilets are absolutely spotless and clean, in stark contrast to my experiences in London. In Tokyo, at every train station, at every park, and about 90% of convenience stores that are basically ubiquitous in the city, they all provide safe and clean public toilets for anyone's use, with the vast majority of them having toilet seat sanitizers, toilet seat warmers for use in the winter, and complete with a shower bidet. There are usually buttons to dry your backsides off with, and even options for shy women to have bird noises playing while they take care of their business. Actually, the high-tech nature of Japanese shower WCs has long been one of the first topics of conversation with newly arrived people and the fascination that surrounds them. And the thing to remember is that all of these spotless, clean, and beautiful toilet spaces are absolutely free. But now it would seem the Japanese have taken their considerable penchant for cleanliness to the next level. In the Shibuya ward of the city near Yoyogi Park, transparent public toilets have now been installed in 5 public locations with plans for 17 more, so that the prospective customer, the reason for the transparency is that the prospective customer can inspect the cleanliness of the toilet from the outside, so as to be able to decide whether to use it or not. While the transparent nature of the toilets might fill some with anxiety, and I'm sure a small minority of exhibitionists with a sense of thrill, the toilets themselves are built using what is called smart glass that turns opaque once the cubicles are occupied and you are doing your business. According to the nonprofit that constructed them, there were 2 main concerns when they were constructing public toilets, especially those being located in parks. And the first is whether the toilet is itself clean inside. But the second is that there is no one secretly waiting inside. And this is quite important in a city that is infamous for its legions of hentai, or perverts, that secretly equip cameras in public toilets to film unsuspecting victims. And adding to the Cyberpunk or Blade Runner-esque look of Tokyo, these toilets at night light up in the parks and look like gigantic, beautiful lanterns. Even the fading pop star Madonna said of Japanese toilets back in 2005 that she missed them after more than a decade outside of the country. And I must confess, when abroad, I do too. because there's nothing quite like going from a heated seat bidet toilet in a spotless WC to a fecal matter encrusted urinal and foul smelling streets that places like the United Kingdom's capital, London, has to offer. And none of this is to say that there aren't other cities that are even more infamous for their streets being paved in human waste, at least in the Western world. Perhaps the most famous on Earth right now would be the brown-strewn streets of San Francisco, saying nothing of the many other large American and Canadian metropolises that too are encrusted in excrement. Much of this would be funny if it wasn't so tragic, because it was the Romans that had this figured out 2,000 years ago, as they installed public commodes in the centers of their cities throughout their empire. But it would seem their heirs, centuries later, can no longer get this basic civic service in their modern cities to function any longer. Thus, the stench of London and the brown of San Francisco. Seems like the mayors of both New York and London are always in some kind of verbal joust over which of their cities is the greatest in the world. Well, when it comes to things like safe and clean streets, and frankly, a safe, clean, and hygienic way to answer nature's call while in public, Tokyo has both of these cities beaten hands down, but especially the latter. Tokyo displays the kind of civilized behavior that Western cities should at least attempt to rediscover and or emulate. Don't get me wrong, I really like London, but if I'm honest, it is a filthy, grimy, and smelly place overall, even if I do like it, and it's not at all safe. I can't say the same about Tokyo though, and the reason is pretty clear. Tokyo still has what's been lost in Western towns and cities: social cohesion, civic pride, high trust, the awareness not to crap in your own bed by vandalizing and destroying property in your own community. Tokyo still has social shaming to keep people and their anti-social behavior in check. Would London, specifically its society, the people that make up its community, be able to handle, for example, another blitz? Would they be able to come together as a people with a stiff upper lip? And if not, why not? What has happened in the last few short decades that has so undermined, so subverted that society? Well, there are a lot of things one can point to, and that will be the subject of another video. Maybe next month if this video proves to be popular. But the question I would like to leave you with is this: why can't we have nice things anymore in large cities in the Western world? Why can't Los Angeles? Why can't San Francisco? Why can't London have nice cyberpunk, Blade Runner-esque, glowing, see-through public toilets? Ask yourself that question. Thanks very much for watching. If you liked this video, please consider subscribing. Also, remember to download Raid Shadow Legends from my links in the description. It's very much appreciated, as is your support for the channel. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.